you came in 2018, right? And that was kind of a strange transition period for the club, because I've seen that it was on hiatus for a couple of years. So talk us through kind of what made you join, and what you had to tackle when you joined.
Yeah, I was actually at Ontario Soccer, so I was working with the provincial governing body, and I had a real good relationship with a number of clubs, including North Toronto. I live in Toronto myself, so it was like the local club, and I was always envious of the amount of resources the club had, the amount of staff, the quality of the staff that they had, and I always thought to myself, if the opportunity ever came up to kind of lead an organisation like that, it'd be something that I'd be interested in. And that opportunity came up in 2018, and when I arrived at the club, I found so many quality people working at various levels, and real top quality coaches, some of the best coaches that I've had the privilege of being around, whether that be as a player previously back home, or any other kind of role that I've had in the game. Some of the coaches at this club are exceptional. So it was just a real good opportunity to come in. I think someone who was ambitious enough to come in and set a strategy and align the technical programs. I think that's the one thing that I would say was potentially missing, was just that alignment piece. We had lots of unbelievable coaches doing their thing, but that's exactly what it was. It was like doing their own thing, rather than kind of maybe working together across programs to make sure that the development pathway or the development programs are all in sync. So I think that's what been the biggest change over the last couple of years, is what happens with our League One program isn't missed at our 13s and 14s, and in turn our grassroots development programs are laying the foundations of what we believe, and that's all it is. What we believe is kind of the ideal way of developing young players. We're really big on that holistic development, really emphasising the off-field, the importance of off-field development, building character, building resilience, life skills that will allow players to go on and be real contributors to society. And I know people say that all the time, but I truly believe that at North Toronto that is a big part of what we do, and that's emphasised at every level, whether it's under eights in a stage appropriate manner, all the way through to our Premier groups at League1 Ontario. So yeah, I think that the organisation has been great for me and my personal growth, because I'm all about working with quality people. People talk about high performance environments, and I believe that people make that. I think that our technical team and our staff are really trying to move the game forward in our community, and I'm just fortunate enough to be part of it.
Brilliant. So when you came in, everything was kind of there already, and you just needed that little bit of guidance and structure to kind of make it what it was to now what if you has explained is so special.
I think so, Matt. I think like the staff were there. That's what attracted me in the first place. It was just maybe organising things a little bit differently, and being a little bit clearer on our expectations or who was responsible for what. And I think that's been what's allowed us to grow and to improve across the board, in my opinion.
Good. So this was your first job in L10, right? League1 Ontario.
Yep, this is the first League1 Ontario when I was previously at the club level wasn't in existence back then. So yeah, this is the first club that I've worked with, and they had just pulled out, as you said, they just pulled out of League1 Ontario when I joined the club, and that was probably the right thing to do. At the time, the player base, we didn't have probably a group of players who have came through our programs. And that's something that League One to us represents the top of our pathway. It's not just a senior team where we're going to pull random players or host big tryouts and pull players, male and female, in to represent the club. For us, League1 Ontario represents the top of our development pathway. And we very much see it as a programme for North Toronto players. Yes, there is additions from outside, naturally, particularly a couple of older, more experienced players have really helped with the development of our players. But yeah, back then I think that gap existed between where our OPDL, which is our kind of top youth programs, where those players were and where the league was. And we were having to rely on a number of players from outside the club who didn't really have any connection or affinity to the coaching staff or to the club itself. So there was a bit of a gap there. So they decided to, before I came on board, to move out of the league. But yeah, after a year and a half working in there, we noticed it's something we need. We needed to be back in League1 Ontario as our players started to mature through our pathway, our 16s or 17s or 18s. And last year was COVID impacted, obviously. We on field we weren't as strong or as competitive as we wanted, but really, really young players in the league, and that continues to be the case today.
Fantastic. So you've mentioned League1 Ontario from a Nitros perspective. As a general picture, looking over the whole of the league, what have you made of L1 over the last couple of years, and what's kind of the growth potential that you see in the league, and what are your opinions on all that, basically?
Yeah, I think the league has been, well, for the men for the last good few years, it's been a real place for young Canadians to play and get exposure, and I think that can't be underestimated. You only have to look at the national programs, the number of players, whether they've moved overseas or into MLS setups. League1 Ontario has produced a number of players, or given young Canadians who maybe would have got lost to the game previously, because it was really a big drop off from their youth club experience or youth national teams, collegiate experience, university soccer. There was a big drop off between that and just amateur men's football, and that was that was filled, that void, by League1 Ontario. I think a lot of credit's got to go to the league and the vision of Dino and the rest of the guys in the front office. The women's program is unfortunately, and I say unfortunately because it's something that hopefully the ecosystem in Canada can address, but it's the highest level of play for female football in the country, and that's pretty sad that's where we're at right now. But it's the reality. League1 Ontario currently fills a massive void on the female game. We have, this year alone, we've got Olivia Smith on our women's roster, very young player, but she's represented Canada at senior level. Now, I don't think there's many other senior national team players in other countries playing in a pro-am or a semi-pro league in the female side. So it just kind of shows you the need for League1 Ontario, but also the need for us to develop a professional league for the females in the province and obviously the country. But yeah, the league itself has been massive, mate. It's really provided young Canadians with a platform, exposed them to a higher level of soccer, but also like higher standards, like the standards imposed on clubs, even from the game day experience, the need for sports science, medical support. They really have tried to have a standards-based approach to that semi-pro environment, and I've enjoyed it. I'm actually coaching in the league with the women this year. I've enjoyed the experience so far. I think it's been hugely beneficial for the young players that play at North Toronto.
Excellent. That's a great answer. So let's go right back to the very start then. You were but growing up in Scotland. It's obviously a football back there. Football country amongst a lot of other things. Talk us through how you got into the sport, what your upbringing was in the sport over there.
Yeah, I was kind of late to the table, to be honest. I didn't start playing competitively until I was about 12. A lot of my mates back home will tell you that's why my touch is so bad. But yeah, I was late. I was late to the table. My dad played professionally, so I was always like kind of around football. I was always like kind of immersed in kind of family environment. But like, yeah, I was never pushed. My parents never pushed me to get into it, and I was just happy playing different sports and hanging out with my mates. But yeah, just before high school, I really started to take it seriously, and I became obsessed to the point where I'd be the one chaperone everyone's door, just wanting to go out and play with the ball all the time. And I think that's how I kind of got to. I didn't go far in the game as a player, but like relatively speaking, a short space of time, I did pretty well. I went from 12 not playing organised football to playing academy football by the age of like 16, 17. But I was never good enough to really kick on and have a career. So I had pretty honest conversations with my parents, and university was always something that I knew was a priority. And I decided to try and combine that with playing playing at a good level in the lower leagues back home, and it just wasn't sustainable. So an opportunity came up to go to the US and play like college football down there. So I took that opportunity, and when I got there, I got that kind of bug to coach, and I really saw the lifestyle, what it could give someone who maybe wasn't good enough to be a player or to make it in the professional ranks, but it's a very good career still attached to the game, and that's where it really all started for me when I went over to the US. I ended up in Canada, met my wife who's from Toronto, and she didn't want to leave Toronto, so I came up here, and I've not looked back since. I've loved my time in Canada. I think the game's growing, and it's different from back home. It certainly is. It's kind of unique landscape, but I've really enjoyed my time here. I think there's so many people trying to do the right thing and grow the game in the right way.
Good. You spent, you grew up over in Europe, in Scotland. Were there things that you were able to bring over to North America to that from that in order to kind of develop the game over here a little bit more, or bring a little bit of a different flavor, or was it kind of, this North America way is fresh, it's new, and I like it, and I'm gonna listen? Or was it a little bit of both?
Yeah, I think you always bring things with you, right? Every experience you have is a learning moment, and you take the good from every situation. What I would say is, I think, like, probably in the past, individuals, associations have been guilty of trying to copy and paste what works in other parts of the world. And like in Canada, it's such a unique landscape. It's even climate, culture, like distance that you have to travel. Like our youth players are traveling 4.5 hours to play in the weekend. Like, so that kind of stuff just, it would be completely unacceptable in the UK or anywhere else in Europe. So I think we've got to be really careful when we look back and we try and copy, whether it be a development model or a league structure from other countries, those so-called developed football countries. And I think it's really careful that we need to be careful we don't just try copy and paste, because it's unique. We've got unique constraints in Canada, culturally, social, economical, like geographical. Like there's so many constraints. So we need a Canadian solution. And I think that's where League1 Ontario, Canada Soccer in the last few years have been really passionate about. Everything has to be unique to Canada. Yes, we aren't going to turn our nose up at best practice from other places, but it has to fit within the Canadian context. So I've always thought that myself. Yeah, you've always got some things you picked up along the way, but you have to always look at it through the lens of the Canadian context.
Good answer. And has your university degree in, it was business, right? How has your university degree helped in you thinking in that way and thinking about the kind of the role that the soccer in Canada can play, and has it helped in that degree helped in your role now in developing the sport in North Toronto?
Yeah, I think that my time in university and what I picked up during my studies is it's certainly helped. I might be involved in football, but at the end of the day, it's all about people. It's about managing people, whether that be when I'm privileged enough to be on field coaching, which is a very small proportion of my job. But you're dealing with staff, as I say, 16 full time, plus your part time staff, plus volunteers. It's managing up, being able to manage a board of directors. Like these are all people skills, and I think that a lot of the theory anyway, was provided during my university days, but it wasn't really until you start diving into the real world, and I'm sure you'll agree with that through your experience, how you interact, solve problems, deal with conflict. I think that's where the true learning takes place, and I've been privileged to work with a number of quality people over the years, and real mentors who are still mentors to this day, that former bosses, former colleagues, who kind of helped me along. And I would say that itself was way more valuable than studying business management for 4.5 years.
Good. So who would you say are those kind of, maybe those influential people, or maybe one influential person that you think, that they gave me a real big learning curve that has now shaped me in what I do? Is there anybody in that in your career, or and talk us through those kind of role models that you have?
Yeah, for sure. I think the one that jumps to mind right away is Bobby Lennox, who he started or gave me a start at Ontario Soccer. He was a manager of player development, and I was brought in to serve as a regional manager. So I really worked closely with Bobby, and it was around the time where Canada Soccer was really trying to roll out long-term player development, which we've got similar models back in the UK, mate. But really just making sport stage appropriate, really understanding the true value of sport, not just to develop elite players, but how do you keep more players in the game? How do you make each level as enjoyable and as inviting for young players and participants? And at that time, there was so many new initiatives, like the removal of kind of scores and standings at the younger age groups, trying to make sure that players were playing the correct format of games. So instead of playing 11v11 at 9 years old, 10 years old, like playing 5v5, 7v7, 9v9. And that was a real turbulent time. And I mean, like, I went into the role at Ontario Soccer and I was confident, probably more confident than I probably should have been because I was younger. But I just noticed, like, right away, like, how Bobby deals with people, whether that be his colleagues, whether that be managing up, or dealing with conflict that is going to happen whenever there's cultural change out in the membership, how he reacts to situations, and just sitting there watching it, like being able to lean on him for advice along the way has been unbelievable. And I'd say that he's the type of person that would be successful in any walk of life, any field that he decided to try his hand at, just because he's great with people. He's unbelievable with people, and doesn't shy away from conflict, but uses conflict in the right way to really stimulate growth and conversation. And yeah, I think to this day, when I've got issues at work, or I've got questions, or I'm not sure if what I'm doing is maybe the right option, like, he's always available. I pick up the phone, and I don't think it's just me that would say that. I think he's been a mentor and an unbelievable resource for so many people in the game in Ontario, and specifically. He works now with Canada Soccer, so I'm privileged to still stay connected with some of the coach development work that I do with Canada Soccer. So Bobby certainly comes to mind, but there's others, right? There's others that are at different levels, in terms of maybe they were colleagues, and they may not associate themselves as a role model or a mentor, but I've got people that maybe report to me right now that I'm learning from, and I think that's so valuable, to be open-minded and embrace challenge, embrace conflict, even amongst a kind of a management team. So there's people that I work with that even report into me now, coaches that are challenging and making me grow, and they're role models in different ways. So yeah, I think if you had to ask for one, it would certainly be Bobby, but there's been many.
Great stuff. Great stuff. So let's talk this season. You've had a really strong start, both your squads, men's and women's, in the Premier divisions. And would you say going into this that you were this season you were slightly underdogs after maybe performances that you weren't quite up to what necessarily you wanted last season, or because you've had a fantastic start, certainly up at the different end of the table. What would you say changed, and would you say that this was coming?
Yeah, last year was obviously impacted by COVID. The start time for the season was really late, meaning our players who are US based, or even some of our Canadian players, they'd already departed for school. So these players had already left. So are kind of older, more experienced. I mean, I say more experienced, it's funny, but I'm talking 2003s last year. So they're only 18. But they were a real talented group, especially on the boys' side. They left basically on the eve of the season kicking off. So we were forced, our hand was forced to play 2004s. And 2004, like 16, 17-year-old kids playing against Masters, playing against Vaughan, etc., who have got real seasoned League One players who have been around the block. And it was the same story on our female side. Like, we had 2004s, the majority of the team, 04s, a couple of older players who were no longer playing at university, which brings its own challenges. So last year for us, it wasn't even. There was not really any point in looking back. It wasn't. It wasn't our team. It wasn't going to be the squad that ever kind of took to the field in 2022. But what it did do is it gave some of those 2004s a real learning curve, and some of them have now moved into that kind of first team Premier environment, both on the male and the female side. So yeah, we don't look back. It's not surprised us in terms of the contrast between 2021 and 2022. That being said, like, yeah, we are doing well on the field. Our ambitions and our conversations have always been, can we be in that top half? Can we challenge for playoffs? And that's, in my opinion, still very much on track.
Excellent. And you had the double header as well recently, early this season. Do you think events like that will help the game grow and should be more, leagues and the whole kind of Canadian soccer community should be united and against almost with one common goal of growing the game? Do you think that things like that will work? And how did you find that kind of double header experience?
Yeah, I think we've been involved in two now. We played down at Forge after Forge's game in Hamilton against St. Catharines, and then we played against Vaughan following the York United game. I think it was fantastic. Like, just being able to have that more festival of football. I'd love if we could tie in some of the younger kids. I know we invited them to come to the games and whatnot, but there's a big difference between actually being part on field, maybe running outside the stadium, being able to set up like small-sided festivals so that the younger kids could all become part of it. But I do think that's the way to go. I think really pulling things together and making it a community event. We're trying to do that with our League One, just within our own community, trying to make sure our younger kids are playing before the games. It's a challenge from a scheduling perspective, but yeah, I think the more we can come together and share resources, number one, being able to allow players to play in different venues that maybe they've not had the privilege of doing previously, it can only be a good thing for the game.
Good. And talking of the game, and the building up to Canada as a country, I think eyes are looking to later this year. There's a sense that obviously we've got a big League One season to finish, but eyes are looking to Qatar. What do you think from your perspective of kind of Canada's credentials? I'm going to throw it to you.
More of a chance in Scotland. No, I think that the national team have done a remarkable job, not just of qualifying for the World Cup, but really galvanising the community and the nation's support behind them. It's been a roller coaster since I came to Canada. I remember like getting defeated 8-1 down away to CONCACAF nations Honduras, and it's like where we were was really rock bottom, and it's been a kind of rocky road, lots of changes, lots of coaches coming and going. And I mean, I've been privileged enough to be in and around John Herdman, whether that be through coach education or previously at Ontario Soccer, and just hearing him talk and hearing his vision and how he kind of galvanises a group and creates that culture that has really kind of moved the national team into a different level altogether, the standards both on and off the field. So I think that huge credit has to go to the coaching staff and the number of young players also coming through. Like, these young players are coming from community clubs, whether that be they're taking a step to an MLS academy before moving on or overseas to an academy. They're starting in community clubs, and you only have to look at Jonathan David, was playing amateur football in Ottawa, 16, 17 years old before he got his move to Belgium. So there's a lot of good work being done at the community level. There's a lot better of players, in my opinion, being developed in the grassroots system. And I think a lot of that has got to do with change that happened like in the last 10 years with the long-term player development models, making sure that the game is more accessible and the game is more age and stage appropriate. So I think that we're riding the crest of a wave right now. But we're really now seeing the kind of fruits of our labour from grassroots all the way through, better coaching at the kind of senior levels. And I think that we've got we've got a real chance of being competitive at the World Cup. I mean, I think the group is going to present its own challenges, but it's exciting. It's an exciting time to be involved in the game in Canada, and as a Canadian national team supporter, like it's fantastic. I think that 2022 is a great achievement to make there, and then they've got 2026. So to make back-to-back World Cups as a host nation, they'll be at 2026. It's an unbelievable time, and we have to come together and work together to make sure we take full advantage of this kind of opportunity, because it won't come around again.